Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Property Hustler Show. My name is Andrew, and today Ping and I are joined by a very special guest, Aisha Govani, who is the co-founder of Midterm Rental Properties. She's a seasoned real estate investor as well as the co-host of a very successful podcast. So, Aisha, really great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
I know last time you were telling me that you were part of the midterm project with Sarah, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
you haven't officially launched that yet, have you?
Yeah.
Yeah?
It's launched.
Okay, how's
Yeah.
that going so far?
We're at the dating stage with our guest companies. So we're at that stage where we've now made relationships with all these corporations who want to book through us. And now they're finally realizing our value. And now they're reaching out for future bookings and we're learning how they work, what their needs are. And then simultaneously, I have to onboard the right investors in the right places to meet these demands. But what's happening is I'm getting a lot of requests from places where properties aren't as readily available, like the GTA. How many people buy an investment property in the GTA nowadays? You're not going to do that. But there's the demand for guests. But when you're looking at the properties, everyone in Hamilton wants to list with me because that's where their investment properties are. So now we're tapping harder and harder into the Hamilton market, which is now at that stage, it takes about 4 to 5 touch points with a certain person. And we're at that final stage where we're convincing them to just continuously only go to us. Forget Airbnb, forget any other coordinator you used because we can offer this, this, and this. And that's where our value comes from, right? So you're saying to me well, we have to administrate that booking that I connect you with. No, you'll just have to say yes and collect your check. My team does everything else in between. And the same with our bookings. You just say yes, we handle the entire booking, all the communication, and then you just collect your portion.
It sounds almost like it's a very formal way, on the table way of kind of the rental arbitrage systems that some people do, where people will rent from other landlords, but you're not renting in this case.
No.
You're just providing a mediary service, and then they rent to corporations. So it's very B2B.
So it's like midterm rental management type of stuff, right?
Yeah, so we don't actually do any property management. We only do the guest allocations.
Got it.
But yes, it's very much so the relationship between us and the companies because we want consistency. We want it to be not like a one-off, someone off the street looking at our website. We hand deliver your property. So let's say you give me a listing, 555 Wentworth Street South. I take your listing, I get all the information, and then I go around all of Hamilton and I hand deliver. I'm here's 55 Wentworth Street South. Here's what they have to offer. Here's what they'll charge you monthly. And then we consistently call, we're making 50 to 60 calls a day to push these properties, which Airbnb is not going to do for you. No other company is going to do that. They just don't have the resources.
So where does your service stop? Once the tenant's in, and then you guys
So
because you guys
we-
don't do the property management side, right? So what happens if there's any complaints about the repairs or?
Yeah, great question. So we actually do all the guest communication from the time they check in, from the time they inquire to the time they check out. You would have a property manager or a handyman available and a cleaner. And then if I couldn't handle anything during that duration, let's say the toilet started to flood, I'd call you and say, toilet's flooding, can you call your handyman? And then have them come in.
During the time of your allocation.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. But the minute it's handed off, you kind of hand off also the contact information
No.
of the landlord?
No, we handle everything till the checkout. The only time we contact you is if there's an issue. You need to call your handyman or the cleaner needs to come in and it hasn't been arranged.
Okay, so in the meantime, the business has contact with you. So you're not doing the property management, but you are acting as as sort of like the administration or reception.
Guest allocator.
Okay, guest allocator. So, but you relay messages. Because I would wonder what happens. I guess you vet your businesses the same way that you vet the landlord places or the landlords and the houses that you take. Because you get stuck between a rock and a hard place if, let's say, you have a landlord that doesn't take care of something in a timely manner, and then you have this business contract with somebody. Okay.
Yeah, and the investors know we have a certain standard, and if you mess up one booking with us, we won't book you again because we have a promise to that company, and if they can't rely on us for high level quality assured services, we lose our value.
Because managing landlords or investors, sometimes it's just as hard as managing tenants, right?
Yeah.
Or guests.
Yeah,
So-
but when they see our value and they see we're able to keep them consistently booked, clients who are not going to squat, who do not want to stay there longer than their desired time, who are coming from a company that they know, my guest isn't going to come in and wreck your place because guess what? Their company sent them there. Their insurance adjuster sent them there. Their HR director sent them there. So there's lots for them to lose.
So the standard is like Airbnb, though. You have to have a fully furnished place.
Absolutely.
Right? And then they have to provide certain services to the outside of the building and things like that. And how long is a midterm rental, on the shortest side
1
of
month.
1 month is the minimum.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the longest can go as long as it wants.
Yeah.
Do you have an average that you're seeing or you're projecting?
Between 2 to 4 months, sometimes 6 months.
Okay.
depending on why they need to travel and where they're usually going. That'll differ too. So Toronto will be like a month, 2 months. Hamilton
Yeah.
might be 4 to 6.
How much per day?
We do per month.
Per month.
Yeah.
And would that be like
So
higher than the average rent?
So it'll be lower than short term, but higher than long term for
Yeah.
sure. Let's talk Hamilton. On average, the investor will net in Hamilton $3,500 for a 1-bedroom, $4,000 for a 2-bedroom, $4,500 for a 3-bedroom.
That's pretty good.
3,500 for a 1-bedroom, so for a 1-bedroom apartment. Like, okay, so a house, let's just say, would they do houses?
We mostly have houses.
Yeah,
We
okay,
mostly
so-
have investors who have
Oh,
detached
sorry,
or
I-
semi-detached homes.
Okay.
Okay.
I thought you were talking about apartments.
Well, it could be like if you had a
Yeah.
1-bedroom apartment in Hamilton and it fit the bill, we would offer you that same.
Yeah, so let's say like a standard townhome, Ancaster, right? Let's say it's one of those newer ones, so let's say a little smaller, 3-bedroom, small townhome. Those would typically rent today for anywhere between $2,500-$2,700 plus utilities. What would that look as a midterm rental for 1 month? And does it get cheaper if they rent more months?
It would look like for you to get in your pocket $4,500 a month. It does
Yeah.
not get cheaper if they do 6 months as opposed to 1 month.
50% more, so yeah.
Yeah, on average, double of what you get for a long term. But you're also putting in roughly 20 grand to furnish that place fully to have it ready for me.
Yeah.
To be
Yeah,
honest,
that's
So
furnishing,
we have to
yeah.
consider that for the investor.
Yeah, we actually got a few people that we can refer to pretty much right away. They're doing the Airbnb and they were like, it's actually a little too much work.
They're
right?
also nervous about it because they're crunching down on it.
Yeah.
Actually, question for you then. So, some of the people who are doing Airbnb, one of the problems that they have when it comes to qualifying for more mortgages is that the banks don't recognize the Airbnb income on the short term. And then they want to see leases, like proper leases in place. Does midterm rental solve that problem or does that address it somehow?
No, because we also cannot sign a lease. We have to protect you from the landlord tenant board. And the way we do that is we are a commercial entity with a booking site. So if you were to book someone off any platform by yourself and they were to say, oh, okay, I'd like to stay at your place, book me off Airbnb and I'll pay you a little bit extra, you pocket, you save that percentage and you do that. After 1 month, they get landlord tenant board rights. They can have rights as a tenant even if they didn't sign a lease. Not only do we not sign a lease, we sign a guest agreement, but because we're a commercial entity and I am a proven booking site that has clients coming in for the strict reason of booking through us midterm month to month, I can prove that through conversation. I can prove that through contract. We would protect you. And they
Yeah.
couldn't go to the LTB. We could call the police, have them removed, just as if you were to stay in a hotel and say, I'm not going to leave.
That's very interesting. Okay, actually, do you charge HST on the service to the business?
Not if it's 30-day plus. No, we don't do HST.
If it's 30 day plus, you do not charge HST. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, maybe you can fill me in because you've obviously researched this. I was under the impression that for police to be able to come and remove somebody and for them to consider it hotel or not a residential service as much as it is like a service provided, I was under the impression that you had to charge HST in order for it to fall outside the RTA. But I don't know actually. I'm curious whether or not you've looked into that.
So we've had conversations back and forth with our accountant, but to not fall under the RTA, because we are commercial, and I just had this conversation with my paralegal, we work extremely closely with our paralegal, like on a daily basis. Any questions come up, I'm like, I need direct instructions from you how to ensure we are following the right rules so that our landlords, our investors don't get in trouble. And he said, if they book through you, you are a booking entity, you are a commercial company, you are clearly a direct booking site, that's what's going to protect them and that's what's going to allow you to call the police and get the Crown involved instead of the LTB. He's like, it's a no-brainer. I've seen it happen. And because you have the right things in place, your investors will be protected. It's such a new strategy that we are also learning trial by fire, right? Every day I have to be very, very careful that every step I take ensures that we are going in the right way because it's not defined, right? They have the bylaws for short term. They haven't really caught on to midterm, but we want to make sure if they do, we're still okay.
See, this is the biggest problem with our current system. It really forces investors to have to be creative, right? To feel like they can protect their assets, right? Because now we actually have many people approaching us and asking us about midterm rental, which we don't have any experience about. We just knew that with Airbnb, if you want to do that on the Airbnb platform, you gotta be very creative, right? You cannot book it for over 28 days, and then you have to actually ask the guest to leave the premises, take some photos, and then get them back in. And then I'm just like, okay.
I wasn't actually aware of that.
No,
it's
yeah.
a lot of work, and I wouldn't be happy as a guest if you asked me to do that.
Exactly. So they also try to compensate the guest for doing that kind of stuff. But then the moment that you are being so creative in front of your customers, then it just feels a little sketchy, right? So we never looked into that simply because based on our understanding, it's too much work and it requires too much mental energy too.
Well, I mean, there are certain things that come into play, like why people, I think, favor platforms like Airbnb in lieu of something like what you're providing. is also largely the insurance.
Yeah.
Right? People talk about the insurance, what it is that it will protect them against. Like, what happens if somebody comes in for a month and you spend $20,000 on furniture and they damage the furniture? What happens there?
So we actually have a hefty hit damage deposit. It's a booking deposit that turns into a damage deposit, upwards of $1,000. We hold on to that for you to ensure if anything happens up to 2 weeks after the booking checkout that you're protected. And every one of our investors has to have their own short-term insurance. It's more, of course, but it does protect you from anything that were to happen past that $1,000. But also remember, like, people coming on the Airbnb platform it's Russian roulette. My people are hand selected. I know the people coming to you are coming from Amex or coming from Black & Decker or coming from insurance company. So we know why they're coming. They've been passed on to us through a vetted source. We know where, usually a lot of the times, where they work. We always have proof of primary residence. So we have a lot of things in place that not only protect us, but leave the guests with a lot to lose if they do choose to do something unsavory to your property.
That's interesting, because although I think people would love to talk about how they can use this and circumvent, let's just say, the RTA, or they want to talk about insurance, I think the fact of the matter is that with the service you're providing, the fact that you're selecting people, it really makes all the other things kind of moot points.
Yes.
Right. So it's not something that you even have to lean on.
How did this concept get formed or developed? And when did that happen too?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. So Sarah Larby, my business partner. So Sarah Larby, myself, and Lee Pollock, he's our in-house renovation contractor as well. So the three of us have partnered together. She's been doing midterms for quite some time. When everyone else was still doing short terms, a lot of her properties organically slid into the midterm sector. If you know anything about her, you know she's always in the forefront, thinking 5 steps ahead, how to shift when the market starts to look funny. So when the short-term market started to take a hit, she started to realize a lot of her midterm properties were still doing really well. And then we started discussing, as often we get together, we come up with a lot of business ideas. And this was one that really took fruition organically as soon as we started to decide, okay, this is something we should present to investors. We should try to help them pivot. And it really was, how can we help these investors who are panicking? Because as a coach, you can imagine how many calls she gets on a daily basis of the panic. So she's aware what are investors worried about, and we're always getting together to think about solutions. Yeah. So she said, okay, let's tuck into the midterm strategy. Let's see if we can find a solution and create a way where our investors can also join us, but it's very controlled and very on purpose, right? So we know what we want, we're going out there, but we knew it wouldn't be easy because obviously you have to have a whole team behind you, which is why an investor can, potentially keep their property occupied with midterm, but like, how much time do you really have after your day job to go around and call companies? If you're lucky, you'll find a good company, they'll use you a few times, it'll be great, but this takes a lot of work to become a different option than Airbnb. This is a company that has billions of dollars behind them. Like, we're a very slim operation. Yeah. So she decided, okay, so let's move forward in the midterm. It was really her idea, and we birthed that, and then we did a course. So we thought, okay, let's take everything we know about midterm rentals and let's teach a course. So in October, we launched a course, and the course went from October till about January. We threw in a few bonus modules. It's still available online. You're able to purchase it off our midterm rental properties, and we're adding bonuses. So this time around, we're adding 3 live Q&As where you can come on and ask specific questions about your property, your situation, your city, your bylaws, and then we'll do our best to answer those. So that's essentially how we were created.
So how many properties are under your midterm rental management right now?
So we probably have in total about 20 to 25 who've signed up. And on a daily basis, I get about 3 to 4 inquiries and have about 3 to 4 calls with investors who are interested in moving forward.
20 to 25. Yeah, that's actually pretty good. That's
Yeah.
a pretty
That's a good ramp up.
And that's like
pretty
ones
good
that
volume.
are completely onboarded. There's like a whole list. They're in the process. They've called me and said, we're completing renovations. Will be done in May. I'm about to close. I'll be closed in June. So there's about 20 others who are just waiting to either finish renovations or close on their purchase. And they'll be signing up with us. Process is already in place.
So do you have a checklist for these investors on like exactly what they need to get, or even like the style of the home? Like, how do you streamline the product? Or that's like probably not something you guys care too much about?
No, we care very much. Our properties are because of the quality assurance we guarantee with our company. I have to have a call with every investor and make an outline of exactly what they need to be. So for example, let's say you came to me and you're like, oh, my parents are moving out to a smaller condo. We have their house. They're going to leave all their furniture. It's good to go. Can I onboard?
Mhm.
If I come in and it's like a couch from when you were a child, and then your grandma's rocking chair, and then, the kitchen's outdated and all your dishes are mismatched, it's a no-go. I will then support you and say, here's all the things I need you to change about your property to ensure I can offer it to my executives and get an executive level of pricing as well. Have them know it's going to be a great place and have them come back. We want repeat clients as well. So it's design, durability, things have to be clean and in shape, and then a lot of the short-term stuff. So an external camera, a smart lock, lawn care, having a cleaner in place, internet, Netflix, and then utilities, of course, are also included. Those are like the basics,
Right.
but definitely quality assurance, how the place looks is a big part of it.
And how many of those things do you require that integrate with your operation? Like, I'm assuming the smart locks and anything like that is so that you can tap into them if you need to, right? For entry, any kind of like troubleshooting, if you need to enter, this is all for your operation too. But
Yeah.
you just say you don't visit the property, so you don't even need to do that.
Yeah. So as long as the owner, the investor has access, so it's always like you want a camera that's on your phone. You want a smart lock you can change from your phone. They have the power. So if I needed to get in for any reason, I have everyone's codes. I have all the information, but I don't need really access to any of that because I am in very close relationship with the investor at all times.
Okay, so with the market the way that it is, a lot of people are looking at pivot points and alternate strategies to protecting their assets right now with interest rates the way that they are, and people are afraid of renting out long term to tenants because they don't want to get stuck with the property, and chances are even if they rent it out long term, they're still making a loss. So people are considering other things like Airbnb. People are considering rent to own strategies, and people would now also be considering midterm rentals. Especially the more we talk about it, the more familiar it becomes. How do you think midterm rental stacks up to those other strategies like Airbnb and rent to own as an alternate pivot point?
Well, rent to own will only be if you want to get rid of your property in the near future, right? So that's one totally separate. It would be like you wouldn't be making, I don't think you would be able to charge much more for someone who wants to eventually own your property anyways. You wouldn't be making the type of income midterms could bring you.
Yeah.
For Airbnb, you really want to look at the bylaws. Like look at Hamilton. What happens come June 1st?
They're getting strict. Have they passed that? Or have they passed the restriction?
June 1st comes, all my investors have to figure out what they want to do.
Did they say they're talking about it, or have they decided that they're going to make the restriction to people who are not residing in that home?
I'm pretty sure they passed it like a month ago.
We don't do Airbnb,
Yeah,
so like
yeah.
we're not paying too much attention to them.
Okay, yeah. So they passed it. So June 1st comes. A lot of the investors are selling because they have 3, 4, 5 properties in Hamilton as investors. Obviously, it can't all be their primary. But we're offering an alternative for now that is safe, that is consistent, that is off platforms as such as Airbnb. Like if I walk around and say, I'm midterm rental properties, not everyone's going to know relative to, oh, I'm Airbnb, right? Airbnb is being watched. We are not yet, but we're also a different type. So we target a clientele that's not seasonal, not recreational, and it's a need. So to a certain degree, how are you going to remove properties like ours away from companies who need these properties for their long-term stays? So let's say you are a corporate and every 3 months you come to Hamilton for 3 months. You have a dog, you have a child, you want always travel with your family. You're going to stay in a hotel room every single time you come for 3 months. Airbnb is restricted. What's your alternative? So we've created a space for clientele that's not going to change economically. Even when times are tough, people will always need a place to stay between renovations. How are you going to put a family of 5 between renovations for 3 to 4 months in a hotel? People need places to stay between divorce. They need places to stay between insurance claims. Again, visiting work, traveling doctors, traveling nurses. So we've really tapped into a demographic that, Airbnb is seasonal and recreational. Truthfully, if you have a cottage, you're not really going to do well in the winter. Our properties do well all year because of the consistency and particularly the way we're building our relationship. I'm not just going in and being friends. I'm marrying these people. They are hearing from me all the time. We are offering them special promotions to other properties. We're really hands-on, not only with our investors. Like if you are part of our platform, you get a lot of perks. If you are a part of our guest platform, you get a lot of perks. So we're really trying to be that company that is not just there providing guest allocation, but just support to investors and companies at a time where the restrictions on their short-term rental are going to affect the type of clients that I'm targeting now. Inevitably, they're going to be affected.
Yeah.
So we're just trying to be that safe haven to say, okay, so for me, that's why I think midterms would trump those two, because right now there's nothing getting in our way.
Sorry, if the target audience is actually the company, why does it matter if we do midterm rental or just sign up a 6-month lease or 4-month lease? Because again, the concern of them defaulting on the rent or not moving out or not following the the rule is also like the risk is minimized.
If
Right.
it's a corporate.
If
Yeah,
it's
if it's corporate. So why did you guys come up with a midterm rental rather than just sticking to the traditional rule where just do month to month lease until they need to leave?
So let's say you sign that lease with this guest, and all of a sudden, in the middle of his stay, let's say he's there for 6 months. In the middle of his stay, he breaks up with his girlfriend. She throws him out. He's like, I think I'll just stay here till I sort all this out. Guess what? He signed a lease.
Got it.
So now the LTB will support him. We've put all these in place to ensure that you're protected. That lease will take away any rights you have from saying they're a guest, not a tenant. So it could work potentially, but is it worth the risk?
So you're not signing the lease with the company, you're signing the lease with the individual.
We don't sign a lease at all. The
Yeah,
word
it's-
lease is not.
Sorry, I'm talking about the target audience. The target audience is still the individual in the company. It's not the company directly.
So it is for us. We sign a guest terms agreement with the company that includes the information of the guest. So let's say
I see what you mean.
Property Hustlers is my client, and I say, okay, you say Andrew wants to stay in Hamilton for 3 months. Perfect. Property Hustlers is my client. Andrew is my guest. Andrew will sign the guest terms form, but I also have a contract that says Property Hustlers is my client, and they're part of the transaction as well.
It is a contract with the property hustlers then, right?
Yeah,
It's a guest
contract.
agreement.
Yeah.
The guest agreement. Because the way I was thinking, as you were talking, is like, why don't I just sign the so we'll call that a contract with the company, and the company sublet to their employee or their guests, right? That way, if anything goes wrong, we terminate that contract, and because sublet doesn't fall into the RTA, right?
So that's all still within the realm of lease,
I see.
right? But
Okay.
right now, as you're talking about it, I'm thinking a question here. What is your product? Is it the business? Is it the houses? And then when you're vetting, are you vetting the company or are you vetting the person that the company is putting in? Like, how does that work? And what's your product? Let's answer that one first. What is your product? Is it the houses or is it the businesses?
We're a service-based company. Our service is what we do, and it's the allocation of guests.
So it's a service in between. You place them both. You vet the properties that are coming in. You vet the businesses that are coming in. Do you vet the clients who are coming in through the business?
Yeah.
And what does that vetting process look like?
Good question. So we'll generally get their ID. We know where they work, what their work position is, and we always get a proof of primary residence to ensure they have a place to go afterwards. Primarily because they're coming through these companies as an entity of that company. That's part of the vetting system. As I said, we know they have something to lose if they try something, but it's not very different than Airbnb. How much is a guest vetted other than making a profile?
Yeah, no, true. Okay, so you just have other assurances that come in. Do they pay up front or do they pay at the end? How does it work in terms of and who pays? It's not the guest, it's the company that pays, right?
So it could be either or.
Yeah.
So depending on what the relationship is with the guest and the company, it could be the company paying or it could be the guest paying. They pay the booking fee, which then turns into the damage deposit fee. So that's one fee that gets paid up front. And then they'll pay up to 2 months up front if the booking is longer than 2 months. And then after that, it's month to month, 2 weeks prior to the next month starting. So as an
Okay.
investor, you'll get paid out throughout the stay if it's longer than 2 months.
Okay, and then last question on that. Have you ever had it where somebody has defaulted on payment?
Not yet.
I think I imagine it would just be a much more secure clientele base
That's
that
it.
you're generally not going to have. And if you do your vetting correctly, then there's no reason to have that type of problem.
Yeah, we're very specific. We're very, like, when we go out there, we've turned down guests who've not been, the request didn't make sense. Their reason for staying didn't make sense. You can inquire from our website, right? So there's
Yeah.
been some random inquiries and some have been like, oh, my HR director asked me to inquire. They've referred us to you, but they're not going to help us directly. We'll go through you. So then we know the company because we're the ones who pitched to them.
Yeah.
They've passed us on and then we'll work with the client, the guest directly. It varies depending on how much responsibility the company wants to take. Some of them are like, we don't have space for that in our department. We don't want to handle it, but we're happy to refer you to our team who will then be your guests.
It's a very interesting concept.
No, it's a good solution.
Yeah, it's a very good solution because I imagine that solves a lot of investors' cash flow problem and the concern with the RTA because the landlord tenant board here is just is crazy. We just went through eviction for our own property for like 13 months.
And think about how much, like, the calls I get. Aisha, I'm paying $800 a month out of pocket. I've lost $25,000 this year and they're not leaving and they're not paying rent. And, I think for us, just the freedom to decide what to do with your property shouldn't even be it should not be a question. Unfortunately, it is. But yeah, we can give it an opportunity where you don't want to go long term because, you want to be able to cover your costs. Sometimes if you are built before 2018, you're stuck in a rent that doesn't cover your carrying costs, and then you're carrying it. You get tenants in there who don't want to leave, and you just don't want to be dealing with that. And then the short term, you're dealing with the bylaws, and now people are getting notices. They're really starting to ramp up and watching. So
Yeah. No, you know what? A lot of people who just finished renovations on a property and were looking to sell and want to wait it out for a time being. They have new properties is going to be top of the line, and if all they need to do is now furnish it, if they're considering Airbnb, midterm rentals might just be that solution that they need. But what is the occupancy rate on something like this that you find with, let's say, if we use the example we talked about earlier, a Lancaster home, 3-bedroom house. If I say, can you take this for a year, next year I want to sell it, what do you think the occupancy rate can be on something like that, roughly?
I think
A low
roughly
and a high.
70%.
70%.
That's very good.
Yeah, because these relationships are consistent, right? So if I tap into a company, I'm not just tapping into one person. I'm getting that person and their 50 team members or their 50 staff. And we target them to make sure that they are a company that needs us. And we figure out, so if let's say you give me a property in Mississauga, for example, I'll tap into all the satellite offices in Mississauga or companies who have satellite offices in Mississauga where I know there is already a need. It's there. I just have to be that solution for them for it to be totally hands off. They're not dealing with different investors every time they book a place. Let's say you're an HR coordinator and you have to coordinate. And I was a travel coordinator about 10 years ago for a big NGO, and it was just 150 clients I was juggling with. If I had someone come and say, you only ever have to talk to me when you book any booking across Canada, I'm going to take that relationship because now I'm only talking to Aisha every time I send a client through.
Yeah.
I'm not dealing with 50 different investors every time I have to book an Airbnb, because if you can't do a hotel, it's because you need a backyard, it's because you need a kitchen, it's because you're going to be there a long time. So it's either us or Airbnb or any other competitive companies, but ours is extremely hands-on. The guest only deals with us, a coordinator only deals with us. So it's a lot of work on our end, but we really had to think of a way to be of value, and what are we bringing to the table that other people aren't able to.
Aisha, what's your vision for this company? Or like maybe 1 year ago, 1 year, 3 year ago?
Yeah, I just would love to be in such good relationships with our companies that I can guarantee 100% occupancy to anyone who signs up. That would be my dream, to be that solution. And, at this point, the way we hustle, I don't even think about the money. I don't even think about like what's to come, what's not to come. I'm so ingrained and so involved in the day to day that for me, achieving success would be that, to know that we're that company you call, your property, you'll be able to live that life you always dreamt of, being an investor, to build that generational wealth, or for whatever reason, we can provide that for you if you sign up with us.
Yeah, this is actually such a good idea to provide a solution to all the investors and maybe the guests too.
Yeah.
And the second thing is to really scale up your relationship,
Yeah.
right? Network, right? Because now as an investor, we're always trying to figure out how to expand the network, right? So
Yeah.
now by providing a solution to the investor, now you build a trust.
Yeah.
By providing that solution to the guest, okay, like these people also have a bit of a saving or capitals,
Yeah.
right? Because now you're dealing with the business.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really, really smart idea.
Yeah. And in fact, it's always been a double-edged situation where I've had conversations with investors. So this actually just happened. This morning I had a call with an investor. Before he hung up the phone, he said his property was in Mississauga. He said, by the way, I live in Markham. In 4 months, I'm doing a renovation. I'm going to need a place to stay in Markham for 4 months. I'll call you. Find me a place. And the other day I was on a call with the director of the School of Medicine in McMaster, trying to get all his medical students into our units in Hamilton. And before he hung up the phone, he said, I have a 3-bedroom in Toronto. I'd like to list with you. Can you put it on your platform? Right? So they're seeing us as a solution, not only for their companies, but also they themselves an investor, and particularly if you're not a seasoned investor and you have an investment property, and especially if you bought it in the last 3 years, you're in a panic, right? Like so many people cannot afford the increase in interest rates. They did not even calculate that when they were purchasing their property. So now they're like, do we sell? Is it even a good time for them to sell? What do? We want to hold on to it. Like I get a lot of panic calls.
Yeah, and also based on the needs, right, or the inquiry, you can actually build a product for those type of needs. Let's say if there's tons of inquiry to, let's say, London, Ontario.
Yeah.
Okay, that's acquire maybe a couple properties over there, build it or customize it the way that these midterm rental tenants or guests will like. Then you park your money there, and it's almost guaranteed income coming in.
If you are in the business and you have your thumb on the pulse of the demand for another area, that's also investment opportunity for your group, right?
Yes.
In terms of going out, buying places, flipping them, and then employing this strategy, which is great. I do have questions about like how that works for somebody who's looking to refinance, but that's probably outside of the scope. I think you're already solving a really big problem, which is the income problem and the uncertainty of having to go through the RTA should you rent to regular tenancies.
That's right.
What is the pricing, if you don't mind me asking?
For business.
For the business, yeah. Like,
Like what do we make?
yeah, like what's your service fee, right? That's
Sure.
that's if we're the investor, we're interested. We say we have a couple properties and we're no problem like furnishing the place and then just list it with your platform. How does that work when it comes to compensation to your
sure.
company?
So at the moment, these are, we're in March 2023. The prices currently are, if you were to onboard with us, it's $150 annually just to onboard. That's only like a fraction of what I'm paying in admin fees to get the property onboarded, but we want to be fair to investors. And it also gives me the sign that you're committed. Because if my team goes out and starts vetting your property and then 3 months down the line, you're like, oh, I'm going to sell instead, or oh, I'm going to throw a long-term tenant in, which is fine. It happens. We hold nothing against the investor. At the end of the day, I tell the investor, my goal is for you to be successful. If that means you have to leave me to sell or leave me to go into another strategy, I'm totally okay with it. If you're doing well, I'm happy. So we charge that small fee as a commitment and then no other fee until we book. And then if we book, we, on top of the outlining pricing I gave you, we roughly add around 20% on top and pass that on to the client. We don't take away from the bottom line we've promised you. We want to ensure that even if I can only match what you're carrying every month, we don't want you paying anything out of pocket.
Got it. So 20% is essentially the service fee every single month, basically.
Above what, but again, like you're not paying me that. I would tack. So let's, for example, you're the one bedroom, you get $3,500. I tack on my 20%. That's what I'd pass on to the client.
Okay, got it. And you say that if the client has a bottom line, you're not touching that bottom line.
Yeah,
We're
very clear, and you have a choice. So if I, for example, have a company and they're like, oh, we have someone coming in, their budget's a little bit lower, maybe we'll take a hit on our fee, and then I'll come to you and say, look, we took a hit on our fee. It's still a little bit lower than you want, but we don't have anything foreseeable in the next 3 months. Do you still want it? And you can say, yeah, that sounds great, or like, it's not going to work, I'll just wait. So every booking is your decision. We never hold you to, oh, you've signed up with us, you have to take this booking, but we do ask that you work with us, and we're very fair and extremely transparent every step of the way.
Okay. And in terms of what the landlord is looking for, if they have any problems, I can't even imagine what, but let's just say they have some problems with the way the guest is behaving at the property, would you, I know you're not into the property management side of the work, but do you intervene in that case if there's if the landlord has an issue with the guest?
We would definitely provide as much support as we possibly could. If that entails contacting the company who they sent us through and working like that, we're absolutely able to provide any support you need to help you along the way, for sure.
We're asking a lot of questions based on our understanding, because
Yeah,
I feel like
course.
a lot of people who are not familiar with the midterm rental will probably have the same questions.
Great. Yeah. No, I answered the same conversation 4 to 5 times a day. So I'm happy to do it again for you
Yeah.
guys and all your listeners.
This that you've come up with is actually a really great opportunity for, I think, a lot of landlords. And people are generally looking at real estate right now and thinking, oh, what strategy should I employ, what this, what that. And I feel like everybody has linear thinking. This is a creative idea, identifying a gap in the market, and it's targeting it, and it does offer opportunity for a lot of people. Because even for us, we're thinking now, like, for any properties that we do want to hold on to for a little bit longer, that we have already furnished, that we are operating under Airbnb. Operating under Airbnb, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And the midterm rental really does sound like it sounds like it's potentially more profitable.
Yeah, and less work, right?
Yeah.
And if you sign up with us with the strategy, you literally don't have to do anything. Just have a handyman available, have your cleaner available. We let you know when to book the cleaner, and then we call you if the handyman needs anything, or if we need your handyman for anything.
Yeah.
Outside of this strategy or this business development, what is your real estate goal in 2023? Like, what's your investing strategy?
This is an Aisha question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you're obviously a very seasoned investor. Your portfolio is pretty decent already, and then now there's the midterm rental is a creative way to solve a specific problem. But that's for listeners who are trying to figure out, hey, what are these players trying to invest in 2023? What would they do? What would be the answer that you give out to them?
Yeah, I would say multifamily.
Multifamily.
Yeah, I would say the maximum number of units you can get in a building, or do a conversion, a commercial to residential, how to make the numbers make sense where you can take something and just put more units in there.
Why do you say that?
when looking at all the other strategies, like let's look at single family homes, right? How much can you do with them? You can duplex them, maybe you can triplex them, maybe fourplex them, but then what? What are you going to do with them? Midterm them, put a long-term tenant in. When you're looking to scale, so we have a couple of multifamilies. They're smaller, 3-4 townhomes in a row, and we have a couple of those. But I think the multifamily buildings and really watching, like I'm very fortunate. I get to work daily with Sarah, who is obviously very successful. So I watch really what she does. And my husband has also been an investor for 10 years prior to us being together. So he's on his 20th year of investing. He's a seasoned investor as well as a realtor. So I really asked them, I'm like, what do you guys think? I live and breathe this company from 4 o'clock in the morning to 11 o'clock at night. And I kid you not, those are my working hours. I every day say to my husband, what is happening with us? When can I retire? When can I take my parents on that trip? When can we say, I don't have to get up at 4 anymore. I don't have to grind till 11 o'clock. How are we going to scale? And it is usually trying to find the way to make the biggest amount of cash flow and the biggest amount of return on your investment. And right now, we're looking at the multifamily strategy. Through our midterm company, we've also created ways for investors to scale in different ways. So every month we host a workshop on different topics under the midterm rental company. Last month was midterm rentals. We wanted to educate everybody on how to launch your midterm rental, how to run it. A lot of investors maybe have 1 or 2 properties, they're semi-retired, they want to do it on their own. That's okay. We've given all the tools to do so. This month we are hosting one on April 13th on multifamily. So we're bringing in an engineer, we're bringing in a lawyer, we're bringing in a mortgage broker, we're bringing in an appraiser to answer all the questions, how to acquire them, what to look for, why it's important to look for certain things, and all the other elements our power team can bring to the table. So not only are we providing the solution for midterm rentals, we're continuing to be a hub where investors can educate themselves and make their own decisions. Don't just trust what I say. Talk to the lawyer, talk to the mortgage broker, talk to the people who are going to make your deal happen. I can tell you everything about what I did, but I bought my multifamily like 4 years ago, right? Times have changed drastically. The price I got it for, you're not going to get yours for. The rents that they had that I was able to double in less than a year, you're not going to be able to do that right now. Like, unfortunately, that's the truth. Here are the strategies we're looking at to scale at this current time in the market, which is very unprecedented and very unsure. So we also walk in caution, but if you educate yourself, you're going to make the right decision if you use the knowledge given to you.
When you say multifamily, what's the size of the multifamily are you referring to? 6 to 12, 20,
that people
30?
Should buy?
Yeah.
Well, what can you afford? Right? You have to look at what they can afford that
Right.
they're not going to you don't want to over leverage.
The reason why I'm asking is because when we first got into multifamily, we're buying at like 89K per unit, and now it's like easily over 200K per unit, or even like 250 right, at some point. So even when we're looking at the multifamily in Ontario, they don't cash flow too well either.
No.
And that's why I'm trying to figure out what size of multifamily are you guys
Is there a sweet spot in terms of value?
I don't have that answer. A big part of that is converting into multifamily. So if you can find a building that's, let's say, half commercial, half residential, convert from commercial to residential, that's where you're going to be able to make that value. Because let's say you buy a building, right? You get it for $1.5 million. It was an old medical building. All of a sudden you put 22 units in there and you're charging $2,000 per unit per month. You're going to make that money. And then just with the renovation alone, you're going to at least double in value that building. So that's what you want to look at. I'm not necessarily saying going and buying a ready-made multifamily. That might not be the answer because just to exactly what your point was. But I would say more conversion, something you can make more out of what you're buying. That's how you're going to make the value.
Add to the building.
That's
exactly.
it. Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I would say.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, that already opened up a ton of questions for me because I've seen, you see sometimes these old schools and, these old like commercial buildings, warehouses even, right? Churches, yeah. I've been looking at churches a lot, and I've always been interested because that's a form of architecture that I think you can't build it today.
No.
You can only buy what's existing, and once it's gone, I feel like it's gone.
Yes.
So I like the idea of that, and I feel like there's a certain demographic that would just think it's cool, and then there's the other demographic that'll think it's heresy.
I love
right?
it.
But I mean,
Actually, when I bought my primary home, I only looked for century homes. I only looked for homes that were older, that had their exposed beams, their chair rails, and we didn't touch any of the original stuff. We kept
These houses have character,
Yeah,
right?
we
And
love it.
that's something that if you ask somebody to build it today, it's extremely difficult to get anybody to emulate that kind of thing. You know, it's just not cost effective. It's not like, it doesn't really make sense to do it today when somebody quotes you. And there's very few people who can do it. You have to find these really old Portuguese guys that were working, you know, back in the day and are still working today.
Yeah.
You know, and hopefully you can find one of those guys to do that nice ornate plaster work and everything like that. So no, if you can buy it, definitely great. Maintenance is a bit of a pain on them.
Yes.
But you know, that's the trade-off. But no, in terms of converting something like that, I imagine that if you find commercial property that can convert into residential, not too many people think about that actually, because I think the idea is that commercial performs better and it's harder to convert, I think, from residential to commercial than it is to convert for commercial to residential, because commercial zoning expires. Right. Where if it is commercial, they'll grandfather it in, but the area has become residential and they don't want commercial in there anymore. So you can convert from commercial to residential. In theory, I think it would be easier. I've never done that.
Right.
But in theory, I think it'll be easier in the sense of a lot of these buildings already have the fire code requirements. Right. Fire suppression systems. You know, the walls are not the walls are sometimes concrete. So you don't have it's like apartment buildings. It's already set up. Imagine converting a school and each classroom becomes an apartment.
Yeah.
Right. It's like everything is already technically set up. But I imagine that there's some challenges. I've always been interested in it that would come from having to do something like that. Capital requirements, permits. And
yeah.
Oh, we're gonna have a great conversation with Kim, by the way. Like, he's coming on the show too.
Oh, Ken?
Yeah.
He's awesome. So he'd be the one to talk to about the church conversion too, because he's doing one in Brantford.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's perfect.
And he's actually part of. Ask him about Barton Street. Ken and Lee and Sarah have Barton Street together, and that was the 22 conversion project 22 unit conversion project I was referring to. I've watched them deal with it for the last year, and it has been a lot. It's been a lot, and it's cost them a lot of money. They have also these park fees, or it was like $500,000. It's like there's ridiculous fees, but also the city is always in support of building residential units, right? There's a housing shortage. They're building in an area that is in need of housing. So you'll also get support when building and creating residential units where there were none either. So something to think about. But yes, he would be the person. I'm helping them manage that project. So there's a lot of back end that I've been lucky enough to learn, but it is definitely a big bite when you take that bite. But if you have the right people supporting you, then you're fine. You just want the right people on your team.
For people who are trying to get into real estate this year, because a lot of our listeners, they are relatively young. They're trying to figure out how to actually break into real estate market. The very first thing that they're trying to figure out is how to network with the right people. You obviously got yourself into a very strong position with all the people that you're working with right now. What would be the advices that you can give out to some of our listeners?
To be honest, I attribute a lot of my success to having very little fear. I'm not afraid of rejection. I'm not afraid I might not get the part, or when I say part, I mean like role. So I don't know if you know my story. I actually started as Sarah Larby's executive assistant about a year and a half ago. And within 6 months, we launched our first company, Sell, Rent, Stay. That was a little bit of a bust. We didn't really push it. And then, before the first year mark hit, we had launched midterm rentals. And a lot of the part was because I just didn't think about my personal qualifications. Aside from being a seasoned investor, when you look at someone like her who has 10 years experience and is very prominently known in the community, there is a little bit of an intimidation in the beginning, but I never felt that way because I know my work ethic. I know I can work harder and longer than most people. And not to say I'm better and smarter, but I know I can grind and I'm not afraid to put in extra hours, and I won't stop until what I need to get done gets done. So when I know I have that, I can't really go wrong. Like, I may not be that right person for you or even you, but I won't stop working hard. So for anyone who's trying to enter the real estate industry, don't be scared. Don't be scared to make that big purchase. Don't be scared to walk up to that a seasoned investor. Don't be scared to go to these big events where all the big leaguers are. They don't care. They are really nice people. I'm yet to meet an investor who's not a nice person or who's just got a bigger chip on their shoulder and not interested in talking to me. Maybe I'm just approaching all the right people. But I feel very fortunate that real estate investors are super kind, and very generous with their knowledge. And it's really about you are who you know, right? So I started going to networking events and I started just listening to podcasts, watching YouTubes, and really just when I didn't know something, I would just find someone talking about it online and I would just, well, like I said, folding
questions.
laundry, I'd ask questions and I would listen and listen until it started making sense. And I would go to the right people and say, I don't understand this new policy's come out. Can you explain it? So anyone entering, don't be intimidated because every single person in real estate investing at one point bought their first property and knew nothing. None of us were born with that knowledge. So they bought their first house, you'll buy your first house, and you might end up 10 times more successful than all of us because you might work harder than me and work longer than me. I don't know. But if you have that drive, then you can't really go wrong.
And also,
that'd be my advice.
Yeah, and also right now the information, there's a way more information available
At
to
your
you.
fingertips.
Exactly.
Like on your phone, you could be walking anywhere and just listening to something and really knowledge. Like you guys are out here interviewing, seasoned investors. You're providing knowledge. You're asking all the burning questions that someone on the other end of the screen might want to hear. And you guys put a lot of work into this podcast. I know. So it's access to that information that's definitely of value. Listen and learn as much as you can. You can't go wrong, right? We're humans. Like it's so incredible how we can train ourselves and teach ourselves and grow ourselves. I think very few of us understand the power of what we can do when we want to change who we are. For
That's
sure.
super encouraging.
I agree a whole 100%. I actually don't think people need to be that smart. I don't think that people need to be that competent. I don't think people need to know everything as long as you're just willing to go out and just put yourself into a situation where you have to do.
Yeah.
In fact, actually, I find that when people are in do or die situations, they perform the best.
But Sarah and I could have said, this isn't going to work. No one else is doing it. It can't be right if no one is doing it. How are we going to do? Like, we have no idea. Every day, it's like, how are we going to make this business work? And then something happens. Okay, now we have to pivot. We've pivoted multiple times since launching to address different issues that we've come across that we didn't know existed. Ultimately, I also had to completely change myself as a person to take this business on because it's a lot to take on. It's a lot of pressure. And I had to up my game personally. I had to spend more time. Like I joined CrossFit. I'm like, I have to get in better shape. I have to meditate. I have to wake up early and read. No, truthfully, because you'll burn out. And so I said, I have to start taking care of myself and I'm a mother. So then I have to balance my time between my company and my children, but I can't be less than. I still have to keep up 100% as a mother, 100% as, an owner of a company. So I had to say, okay, what do I need to do for myself to make sure my gas is full, my energy is full, and I'm at my personal best to then perform in my company and lead my team. I have a team of staff who turn to me every day and ask these questions. I don't know, but I'll come back to you with an answer. And I go back and we hit the drawing board and then we come back with the solution that they've come to me with the problem and said, I talked to an investor, this happened. We're dealing with the guest allocator, this happened. And it's a new problem I've never experienced. So every day is a massive learning curve.
That's awesome, man.
If anybody does want to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to contact you? Social media, email, what's the best way?
Yeah, so we have our website, midtermrentalproperties.ca. You can contact me, Aisha at midtermrentalproperties.ca. And then, of course, I'm on Instagram, Aisha Govani _investor.